So welcome everybody to our Humanities and Social Sciences student panel. We are very excited to have you all with us. I am Travis Peck, my pronouns are he, him, and I will be the moderator of today's session. As a quick bit of housekeeping, I would ask that folks keep their microphones muted unless you're speaking, just to cut down on some background noise. I do have a number of truly exceptional student panelists with us today who are all going to be talking about their experiential learning opportunities. By way of introduction, we have with us Larissa Rizzo, a fourth-year social work student. Can you just say hi, Larissa, so folks know who you are?
I use the pronouns she, her. And yeah, I'm excited to see all of you today.
Thank you, Larissa. We have Haley Power, a third-year sociology student.
Hello, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. We have Maya Snelzer, a fourth-year environmental sciences studies program student.
Hi, everyone.
And we have Michael Mann, a fourth-year business student.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out.
So each of our students has completed a pretty unique experiential learning experience, whether that is a co-op, a placement, an internship, or lab work. So we're really excited for the path you have ahead of you, and we look forward to sharing all of the incredible reasons why Trent has ranked the #1 undergraduate university in Ontario for the past 11 consecutive years. So I do have a series of questions prepared for our panelists to answer. Following that period, the floor will be open for folks to ask questions directly to students who have that firsthand experiential learning experience. With all that said, let's dive in. So first of all, Michael, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about what program you were in and the experiential learning opportunities that you've had. So what kind of experiential learning opportunities did you pursue and where did you pursue them?
Yeah, for sure. So once again, my name is Michael. I'm currently in my fourth year in business, and I'm specializing in accounting. I've had the privilege of working at Inclusive Advisory for an accounting field placement since last semester, starting in September. Inclusive Advisory is an accounting firm in Peterborough that works with clients for their personal and corporate taxes, bookkeeping, auditing, estate planning, and lots of others did accounting tasks for clients. And I would strongly recommend for all students to take the course. And I've had the opportunity of working with clients directly, whether it's for personal returns, tax returns, and definitely some other very interesting work. And yeah, that's some of the opportunities I've had working at the accounting firm.
Could you just share a little bit about like how long you were kind of involved in that experience? Was that like an everyday thing? Was that something you were there for like a couple hours a day? Or how did that look?
Yeah, so for that field placement, it was 1 day a week for 8 hours, started in September, going to the end of the semester, would have been in December. And yeah, so I went to the office at 8:30, left at 4:30, half an hour for lunch. And yeah, it was a great experience. And yeah, that's kind of the hours I was working.
So basically what you're saying, if I need somebody to do my taxes, I can give you a shout now.
Yeah, well, I could do my best for sure, but I'm no professional.
No, but that's what EL is all
Yeah.
about, right? Is
Mhm.
about getting that exposure and those skills. So it sounds like you had some really interesting opportunities to do that.
For sure. I definitely prepared some tax returns and I learned a lot taking this course for sure.
As somebody who has no experience, literally no experience with taxes, that to me sounds invaluable. So thank you. Larissa, you've also done, you're now doing your second placement, so you've already done one. How has experiential learning enhanced your classroom learning?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because I think that's what a lot of students are looking for. So especially in my placements, I guess I'll start with explaining what I've done. In my third year, I had a 1 semester placement where I did data analysis for Professor Kimberly Calderwood. And that led to us actually continuing research throughout the summer, and which was not part of my placement. And we just had 2 articles published based on that work that we did together. And then this year, I'm in an agency placement with Heads Up for Inclusion. They have a community and a school program. So I'm working a little bit with them, doing policy analysis, building some workshops, and kind of just getting my hands into everything. So when it comes to applying that and how it's enhanced my learning, I've been able to take my experiences and apply it to the theories and that we're talking about in class. I have stronger analytical skills, big concepts. We're going through a lot of readings in social work. I'm able to, condense that information and be able to clearly express them in my papers, which has also helped with my grades. A big thing that I've learned from experiential learning is time management. My placement was 7 hours a day, 3 days a week, on top of that, classes. So it can be a lot, but you are constantly learning, and yeah, the time management piece was very important. I've also gained a lot of confidence in being able to ask questions, and I think that's super important in a learning environment, to feel confident enough to ask questions and reflect back on your experiences from placement, and kind of like look back on what you may have done wrong, or not wrong, but hiccups. What can you learn from? And then lastly, just a deeper integration of like classroom knowledge. I'm able to apply everything that I learned in the classroom to my daily life, my work, my placement. Yeah.
Excellent. It sounds like there's quite a lot of reflection and integration, and like, as much as maybe you were in placement for those days, I can guarantee you were thinking about placement after the fact. That's true probably for everybody who's ever done placement. It's like it's a full-time job almost.
It's especially true for social work, because especially when you're so passionate about something, it does really, it impacts also growing as a person.
Mhm. But then also, like you said, it does facilitate sometimes a deeper understanding of your academic learning, and hopefully it makes that a little bit easier too.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. When you get more examples in class from students sharing their experiences, and then also reflecting on your own placement from what you're learning, it makes it seem more realistic.
Yeah, there's like a level of realism that you get because it is the real world. It's not just in the confines, that not that a classroom is a confine, but like it is going out into practice. So that actually, I think, leads quite well into our next question. Experiential learning can be challenging. It can be stimulating. How has your experiential learning opportunities stretched and challenged you, Maya?
I guess I'll give some context maybe of my experiential learning. So recently, in the fall semester, I was an education and outreach liaison at the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre. So a lot of the work I did was revolving around educating people about Ontario native turtle species. Before that, there was experiential learning like in classes through like field work and labs and carrying out that kind of thing. But my internship I did it one day a week for 8 hours. But as long as you met the hour requirement, people could do it like twice a week or like three, whatever worked for their schedule. So I will say the idea of actually being in the real sort of workforce and having people sort of trusting you to get a message across sort of was a little bit intimidating at first. So a lot of the stuff that I did was revolving around education. I felt like when I first started, a lot of in class, we talked about how to communicate, sort of like harsh topics in a nice way to people. And it doesn't have to be intimidating. And it's like, yeah, turtle species declining isn't like the most fun topic, but it's like we had to make it engaging and fun. So I did sort of feel like that challenged me. And until that point, all of the sort of education or communication stuff I'd done was assignments for my adult professor or my adult peers. So actually making stuff or activities for like children or for like seniors and making it accessible to them as well was a challenge, I would say, at first. And then also like handling the turtles I had never done before. So that was a bit of a learning curve as well.
Turtles are literally my favorite animal. So I have to admit, I'm quite envious.
Yeah, that's what everyone says when I tell them.
It is interesting because there is such already diversity in the experiences, like handling turtles versus, doing some literature searches and getting a publication and, working with folks to doing their taxes. Like there's that diversity, but there's still a tremendous amount of similarities in some of the skills and the things that folks are learning. It's incredible. I'm very passionate about this, if you can't tell. So Haley, to that end, I was wondering if you could chat a little bit about what benefits you've experienced as a result of your experiential learning opportunity.
Yeah, so I'm currently conducting a community-based research project independently for Consent at Trent, and I'm doing this through TCRC, the Trent Community Research Center. So far, I've experienced many benefits. One major benefit is having the opportunity to use the knowledge that I gained from my past courses in a way that I hadn't had the chance to do in regular courses. For example, in a lot of my classes, we learn about different elements of research projects or complete smaller scale tasks, but I haven't had the chance to apply this knowledge on a larger scale to a real issue. And then another benefit I would say I've experienced are the relationships that I have been able to make with professors, such as my project supervisor and other professionals in the community, because I had the chance to do a networking session with different professionals, such as people who work for Parks Canada. So with everything being online right now, it was nice to still be able to make those relationships even though we are virtual.
So a lot of like relational benefits on top of like the practice benefits. Do other folks feel like they got those kind of similar benefits? Yeah.
Yeah, I can speak to having like a good mentorship role, especially in my research placement. That actually was a big foundation of the research that we were doing, was understanding the learning experiences of the student from having like a mentorship role. And it can be transformational. It can have a huge impact on a person and like the trajectory of where their career goes.
Totally. Yeah, I even thinking about my own placements, I would echo that. Um, and since you just volunteered a lovely sentiment, Larissa, I guess we'll have you answer the next question as well. So what skills did you learn during your hands-on learning experience that you think will help prepare you to move into the workforce after graduation?
That's a very good question, because since this degree is generalist, everything that I learned is so applicable, and depending on what placement you're in, you're going to learn something very valuable. But I'll start with this year with Heads Up for Inclusion. I'll say, like, to be into, I really want to be in like more of a management role eventually. That is a big goal of mine, even in social work, even though it's predominantly women. Management roles are still held by men. So some of the skills that I've gained to be able to get into those roles is understanding policy and how non-for-profit organizations work, how to run meetings, program development, you know, really starting from scratch from the beginning, and working with community agencies, building relationships that foster trust and collaboration, and help, like, working together to create like a common vision. Yeah, I talked about collaboration and teamwork. That is a big piece, especially wanting to go into social work or management roles. Attention to detail was a big skill that I've learned in both placements. Especially in social work, we are always actively listening. We're picking up on the smaller details of things. So that was a very valuable thing that I learned. Yeah, and then my third year placement, which was mostly research based, research analysis, like data analysis, was maybe an unconventional placement for social work itself. But through the research process, I learned a lot about ethics and confidentiality, and increased my writing skills, and how to work in a research team, working with people from with very different opinions and how they work those things out. And then also presentation skills, which is a very important thing as well.
For sure. You know, it's interesting. As you were talking in my head, I was like thinking about job postings. They need good teamwork skills. They need good communication. They need good leadership. They need to be able to work in teams and independently. And a lot of those skills that you see really commonly in job applications and postings, you had identified. Um, can I ask, is that like Haley, Maya, and Michael, do you feel like those were similar kind of things that you got out of experiential learning? Were there other things?
Yeah, I would say the teamwork one was a big one for me as well. We at the center, we had a ton of volunteers, and they were sort of different every time I came in. So it was like learning to work with others in tight spaces, as well as like different people every time, was, I think, something that I found really valuable. And communication as well. I was in an in-person one, but we also did some like virtual aspects. So being able to communicate like in person and written work virtually, I thought was really valuable too.
Yeah, that communication is key. And I think especially given kind of the situation that we're in right now, learning how to communicate effectively virtually is such an important skill to have. And it's not always a super easy one to learn. So, Michael, in your opinion, what would you say is the value in completing an experiential learning opportunity and taking skills that you've learned in class into a hands-on environment? This is kind of a long question, but do you think that you would have been able to achieve the same knowledge level and skills by going into classes alone and not having the experiential learning component?
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I'd like to say there's a lot of skills that I have learned going to Trent and taking various business classes. For example, it's taught punctuality, like arriving on time is very important. Being prepared for classes, for exams, how to work well with others, like in group work or having documents ready by a deadline. Utilizing these skills in a hands-on environment is critical for having a successful placement. That's what I found, at least. For example, if you're not arriving on time for a field placement, it's hard to be successful during that time. And if somebody gives you a task, it's important to get that done by a deadline. Even with all these skills, which are learned in the classroom, there are still some new skills that I've found working in an accounting firm, which I did not in the classroom. For example, I learned some skills in my field placement, like how to give clients. I learned how to act professionally, both for writing emails or talking over the phone with a client or just talking to them in person. There's just definitely some skills that I learned in field placement. I also learned how to use a program softwares that accountants use, like Tab Prep or Caseware, which is two programs that accountants use for personal taxes and corporate financial statements. These are some of the many skills that I've learned in my field placement, and I have learned just by going to classes alone. And for the second half of the question, I would say no. I would not have been able to have the same knowledge by going to classes alone compared to combining both the experiences in this room and through the field placement.
So is it fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your experiential learning opportunity was really valuable in complementing the stuff that you were learning in class and like facilitating another layer of understanding of that material?
Yes, that's fair to say for sure. I learned a lot during my course at Trent, but doing field placement taught me kind of more of a practical aspect to it instead of a theoretical perspective. And I would not have gained that if I did not take the field placement course.
Mm-hmm. You never stop learning. It just looks slightly different. So Maya, I was wondering if you could chat a little bit about describing some of the tasks and opportunities that your particular experiential learning opportunities have offered.
Yeah. So I felt really lucky with my placement, and it's the tasks that I did and sort of their goals for me. I mainly worked in the education department, but they were like, you're a placement student, and so we want you to learn like literally everything that we do here. So I felt lucky that I like came in and did something different every day. So I would mainly do like social media posts or like make turtle activities, or people would book virtual tours with us to come around the center, and I would host those along with my site supervisor, or help like with the tech kind of things. And then I was able to do turtle husbandry as well, which was really awesome. And looking to get into conservation in the future, I found this actually looking at job listings actually really important to have. So I'm really thankful that they were able to entrust me with that, I guess. So that was stuff like cleaning the tanks, cleaning the turtles, feeding them, caring for them, I guess, and then tracking sort of whatever progress they were making. And then also doing office administration work was some of the other tasks I would do if it was, if I had nothing else to do, I guess. But the second part, I would say the biggest opportunity I found from this, like in this program, I found it it was sort of broad in the sense that I didn't know what I wanted to do the first like 3 years of my degree. And then in fourth year or the end of third year, I was thinking like, I want to get into conservation. And so this placement kind of gave me the opportunity to actually try it without having to commit to it. And it's like 3 months is, if I hated it, it would be okay. It's not like I have like a year-long contract. And dipping my toes in the water. And also it was like everyone there knew I was a student. So if I messed up or if something went wrong, like it was okay. And I was like supported through it. So yeah, I think that that was the biggest opportunity for me and I loved it. And so I, through that placement, sort of solidified that I wanted to, my goal is to go into conservation, I guess. Yeah.
And would you say that this placement has moved you closer to obtaining that goal?
Yeah, I would for sure say so because I had no experience in it before. And also like making connections at the center too, for people can actually vouch for me. And then also learning about how people are actually taking conservation efforts seriously and seeing it firsthand was really meaningful to me. Yeah.
That's amazing. Like I said, I'm so jealous right now. I did just want to pick up on something you said when you mentioned that there was kind of like the day-to-day tasks, and then when you didn't have anything else to do, and I think we all use that term loosely because there's always things that you're doing.
Yeah.
You would do like some administrative stuff. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
So yeah, so I think that was just a couple times. If so in the center, when people were doing cleaning or feeding, it's so like jam-packed that they can't send a ton of people to go do that. Or if I've made all my educational posts, it was like, okay, it's like something else to do. So with that I would like package orders, I would answer phone calls, answer emails, that kind of thing, just to sometimes they get sort of backed up with that. So having someone just to help out for a couple hours was nice as well.
Yeah, and those types of tasks, I think it, you'll probably do in any job for the most part. Did other folks kind of have experiences where they did those types of activities on top of what they expected to be doing in placements or experiential learning?
Yeah, I know sometimes the office would get me to answer calls or some emails, which was not what I was kind of expecting with a field placement, but it allowed for me to see that part of this and how that works compared to what I was traditionally doing. So that, I think, yeah, that connects for sure to that.
Yeah, I would say the same with both of my placements being remote or virtual. Email was definitely used a lot, and especially when I'm reaching out to community agencies or things like that, I'm sometimes making phone calls or emails and different ways of communicating.
It's all those not little but little activities that like they have to get done for an organization to continue functioning, and they can be overlooked, but they're so important. And so knowing how to do those things is so valuable. So thanks, folks. That was great. Haley, I was hoping that you could walk us through a day. So what did you do? Who did you interact with? What kind of tasks were you assigned? This is a lot of questions. And how did you know that you were learning? And how did you know you were learning what you wanted to learn?
Yeah, so for the most part, my research project has been completed independently and virtually. So before I actually began the research process, I had to make a schedule that outlined what tasks I needed to complete and the dates that I would have these tasks completed by. So for example, I had a chunk of time set aside to get a literature review done, and then a chunk of time set to have my survey questions constructed. So most of that was time management on my part to make sure I knew I need to get this much done today in order to have it done by the due date. But I have regularly kept in touch with my project supervisor over email, and she answers any questions that I have throughout the process. And I've also had monthly Zoom meetings with my supervisor and the coordinator of the project. So then after my tasks get completed, I get feedback from the coordinator and my supervisor, and I input that feedback into my work. And then I know learning is being achieved because I'm learning how to use my classroom knowledge in a new setting and apply the skills that I've been taught to a real issue, which is actually exactly what I wanted to get out of this process, because with everything, most of my school has been online so far. So it's been great to actually have a chance to kind of put my knowledge to the test and get out of my comfort zone a little bit.
I love that comment about getting out of your comfort zone. I think that's what a lot of school is. But can I just ask our other panelists, do you feel like you were pushed out of your comfort zones because of your placement experiences or experiential learning experiences?
Yeah, I would say I was. I felt sort of, I felt like when I was out of my comfort zone, it was maybe like a little bit rough that time I did it, but then the next time I was like totally prepared for it, because I sort of like getting pushed into the deep end and you're like struggling for a little bit, but then it's fine. I remember the first time I did like a virtual tour for the center, it was like not great, because I had never been on camera before in front of like 100 people on the other end. So the nerves were there. But then the next time it was like totally fine because I knew what to expect. And yeah.
So that like, it's almost sink or swim the first time. And then the next times you're definitely swimming. And
Yeah.
now you're on camera in front of 40 people.
Yeah, it's great.
You're great.
But I would say too, if it, I felt like, and I don't know if other people would feel this way too about their placement, but I did feel like if it was a sync moment, it was okay. And it was like, my site supervisor wasn't going to be like, oh, like you suck. It was more like, okay, like this is what happened and it's okay. And we'll, work from it.
Yeah, I can say that I definitely at times felt like that too, doing qualitative data analysis, because the entire process you're learning as you go, and it can be a very slow process, and I'm definitely someone that's fixated on when I see results. So I had to learn that each day whatever I had accomplished was good enough. And if I'd done something new, I felt very supported from my supervisor to kind of walk through like what I was doing right and where we were going next.
Yeah, I would use that too. My placement coordinator and fellow coworkers were very supportive through the whole process. If there was something that I was doing, whether making like a difficult phone call or anything like that, be supportive, and they would give me pointers afterwards, saying like, "Oh, maybe next time," and then, or maybe not do this, and then next time I made that phone call, I'd be a lot more confident, and I would be more assured in my performance.
So almost that like scaffolding and support of folks, because you are learners, you're not going to be perfect. So having that layer of support and guidance makes it easier sometimes to test those waters where you're not quite sure. Excellent, thank you. We only have a couple more questions. So next one I am going to ask Larissa. So social work is a slightly different type of program in that our placements only happen in years 3 and 4. Can you talk about how the first 2 years of your social work degree at Trent helped prepare you for your current placement position?
Yeah, for sure. So the 2 years before getting into the professional years at Trent, there was a lot that has prepared me for my current placements. I would start by saying the foundation of social work, understanding the history of social work, what are the goals and kind of ethics of social work, really understanding it as a whole. In the 2 years, you only have, I believe it's 4, or I think maybe 3. You only have a couple of mandatory courses. So it really gives you the opportunity to take psychology and, or, things like I did women's studies, I did indigenous studies. So I got a very like comprehensive and full ability to um, take classes that would accompany my social work classes and also prepare me for my placements, in that I'm understanding, anti-oppressive practice and anti-racism and indigeneity, and how social work has perpetuated certain things throughout history, and what legacy that has now for social work. Understanding that in my current practice and future practice. And then in general, using the knowledge and what I've learned in those classes to apply working with agencies, and really connecting with other people about what they have learned as well. And then there's also that piece of, again, like time management and handling time constraints. When you're first going into university, it can be a little bit of a jump. There's much more expected of you. And so being able to set myself a routine and understanding, how do I study? How do I take tests? How do I, engage and communicate with my professors? That all set the foundation for me being able to engage professionally in my social work placements. And then I think the first years also help you understand how broad social work is. And because social work is so broad, it prepares you for knowing that 1 year you may have a placement that is very different from the next because of how varied social work is. And yeah, I think that's kind of where I was thinking with all of that.
Excellent. It sounds to me like the first couple years really helped prepare you not only for placement, but sometimes the ambiguity of experiential learning and knowing that it's so broad and so diverse.
There are some really heavy things that you have to start to begin to understand in social work, especially from the social location I come from. So those first 2 years was really a lot of deep learning and understanding and reflecting. And now in my current placement, those skills all transfer because, reflecting and being able to handle, learning about new events that are very shocking, or movement, or getting involved in movements, those all directly correlate.
Yeah, so those kind of transferable and generalizable skills. And it also, to me, sounds like everybody's experiential learning experiences were supported by like previous classroom knowledge. You're not being, thrown into some deep bottomless pool that you don't know how to swim. You have a lot of the information, the skills, and experiential learning is about practicing, refining, honing, developing, putting them into practice. So we have one last question, and I'm going to actually ask it to all of you. There are many areas that a student can choose to work in after graduation. How would you say your hands-on experience outside the classroom has helped prepare you for your future career? And we're going to start with Michael.
Yeah, so for accounting, there's pretty much two main industries you can get into once you graduate. In business, there's a lot more, but since I specialize in accounting, that's kind of where I'm at. So one industry is working as a public accountant within an accounting firm. And that's where you do auditing and taxes for clients. Or number two, being an internal accountant for a corporation and being responsible for managing the practices of the corporation. And for the field place, I was able to experience one of those two different options. I was able to work at an accounting firm, and I experienced kind of a snapshot of what an accounting firm would look like. And I think this definitely helped me decide what I wanted to do after graduate, as I liked my placement. I liked what I was doing there, and has shown me, prepared me what I would like to do as a future career.
I'm muted. Excellent. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Larissa, what do you think?
Yeah, so I would say that my placements have not only prepared me for the workforce, but also helped develop my interest in other programs which are needed to go into those fields. A major interest for me has been doing policy analysis, which I have been able to actually do in my placement. I'm comparing my Heads Up for Inclusion's bylaws, which is like the rules they follow in the organization, with the Non-for-Profit Act that has just been released. So that skill is very important, especially in doing policy analysis. In social work, there's so many different avenues that you can go. There's research, there's working in community agencies, you could work for like child welfare, you could work for the government, you could even do roles that are not necessarily like social worker, you could be a case manager, work in the hospital. So it's very broad. And I think that one thing that both of my placements have taught me is that, or a skill that I have learned from both, is that flexibility and ability to adjust to my environment depending on what the goals are, what is expected of me.
Yeah, I think everybody has talked about having to adjust to some degree. So thank you. Haley, how do you think your experiential learning opportunity has helped prepare you for your future career?
Yeah, so being in third year right now, I started to think about what I want to do after graduation, and I pretty much had no idea. But as I started getting into this project, I realized that I am really interested in, kind of like Larissa was saying, like policy analysis. I'm particularly looking at training for teaching assistants right now in relation to different issues. So I think it has helped develop my interest and pointed me in the direction that I want to end up going after graduation. And it's been nice to have a little clarity in my mind of the next steps that I have to take.
Yeah, getting that sense of direction is really important. And we do need good policymakers. So I am very optimistic that folks on this call will go out and make good policy. We need it. So thank you. Next, and certainly not least, Maya, how would you say your experiences have helped shaped your career trajectory and path?
I agree with you, Haley. I felt like in the environmental sector, there's like a million and one things that you can be and like go into. So it was sort of overwhelming in my mind, being like, well, I love this, 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 and this, and this. And so like, how do I pick? And I sort of felt like this placement kind of grounded my ideas about what I wanted to do and what I would like for myself. And I did feel like this skills of like soft skills, like how do I want to present myself professionally in like a professional setting, and like how can I make sure that I'm flexible to like for the good of the organization, not just like, oh well, I want to do this today, so that's what I'm going to do. It's not about me. Not that I was like that anyways, but it did solidify that like, you know, you're acting for your organization that you work for. And then like the skills that I learned that like I can't handle turtles in a classroom or like other wildlife. So practicing like animal husbandry was something that I found really valuable and is something that like I can carry with me into whatever career I'd like to do. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. I do just want to say, like, there have been such a diversity of experiences. I feel very thankful to be able to listen to you folks. So I do appreciate you taking the time to share your experiences with us and with me. This does end our formal question and answer period. And I would like to now open the floor to anyone who would like to ask any of our panelists or all of our panelists any questions. So I believe you can unmute yourself or you can ask in the chat. And I will actually just point to one that was asked a little bit ago. That was, oh, it was so long ago. It's a really excellent question. I was very excited that somebody asked it. What is the hardest part about managing an experiential learning opportunity on top of your school? I'm going to throw that to everyone.
I can start. My placement was 3 days a week, 7 hours a day. On top of that, having typically 3 courses. So that can be a lot. The hardest thing for me was self-care, because a lot of time, and like I was also working. I am working. So it is a lot of time dedicated to, you know, your studies, to placement, to working, to your personal life. So finding time for self-care is absolutely essential. It can be very hard, but it's something that you have to do. It doesn't matter what program you're in.
I would say, so for mine, I had placement once a week. I took a full course load and I'm a teaching assistant. So it was like a little bit overwhelming, but I'd say like setting healthy boundaries for yourself. Like I am not going to answer emails when I'm not at the center, or like I cannot, or if I'm at the center, like I'm not going to be doing schoolwork there, or I'm not going to be marking. I think it was more about if it doesn't like happen on like a fast timeline, it was okay. And setting boundaries that were like healthy for myself, I think.
For me, it's the time management part. So I had a placement that was 1 day a week, and then I also had 4 courses. So it was managing my time and designated certain days for certain courses. So that's how I kind of managed my way through it. It definitely, there were parts of it that were hard. Closer to midterms was harder because there was a lot of papers or exams to study for. But overall, like I'd say that as long as you manage your time out and you know what you're going to be working on when, then it's easily manageable, I found.
Yeah, I found for myself time management was really important too. So I kind of made a schedule over the week, so I knew what I'd be working on when. But it's also been nice for my community-based research project. It actually counts as a credit for both semesters. So I've been taking one less course on top of that. So I do have a good amount of time to just be working on that.
Thanks, folks. It sounds like time management is a super important skill to learn and practice. Um, Also, Haley, it sounds like you're super organized, and I could probably benefit from learning something from you. So if you want to send any of those vibes to me, I would very much appreciate it. And again, just opening it up to any folks who might have some questions to any of our panelists. We'll just give it a couple minutes in case folks want to throw something in the chat box.
Hi. Did you guys find it hard managing online if you had to with COVID?
So both my placements have been online, and one semester was no, a year and a half was online. It's all blurring together. That tells you how hard it was. Zoom fatigue is definitely a real thing, and it can be hard if, for me, most of my work was on the computer. So I'm on my computer for 7 hours a day, and then I'm on my computer for homework. So there is that time, like, you have to take breaks for your eyes and really prioritizing, going for a walk because you're sitting most of the time. So it is hard, but it also gives you a lot of flexibility and freedom, like taking breaks when you need to and going at your own pace. And there's lots of benefits to online learning as well. So yeah, I think it balanced out.
Yeah, I'll definitely add to the last part there. With classes being online, you were able to, or I was able to watch the recordings. I could watch them multiple times if I needed to, or if I wanted to just pause halfway through and take a break, like you said. A lot easier doing it that way compared to sitting through a 3 hour lecture. In actually at Trent, being able to get up and take breaks whenever you wanted to. So online was actually beneficial in some regards.
That was an excellent question, I have to say. It is potentially, unfortunately, also the future. So any other questions, comments? We have an incredibly experienced set of folks now. So this is a lovely opportunity to kind of pick their brains.
Hi, I have a question. If we're interested in doing a placement with our program, how would we find out how to get into one, as well as like what kind of ones are available to us?
There's probably going to be somebody in the department, whether that is like a academic coordinator, a AAA, or another contact person that you could ask? Otherwise, it might be worth reaching out to advising.
I'll just also add, when I went on the academic calendar for my program, it shows you a list of all the courses available to you. So I saw one course that said community-based research in third year, and then they gave you the email of who to contact. So I just went through that myself to get in contact with people at TCRC.
I would say too, I found out about placement because like the academic administrator for ERS sends out emails all the time. So placement was kind of like advertised, or there was like an email like interested in placement, and then like sort of walked me through the steps that way.
It will vary depending on department, because like with social work, it is a mandatory. There's 2 mandatory courses that you have to take. There is a question in the chat. What was the process of finding a placement like for folks? Like, how did you find the opportunity that you experienced? And how did you do any of that research?
I can start. So it was, you sort of register, or you talk to the person who was in charge of, for me at least, my placement. And she sent out so either I could find my own placement, or she would help me find one. So if I wanted to, like, I worked on a farm the summer before, so if I wanted to sort of get a credit for that job, I could have. I wanted a different experience, but whatever. It's not the point. So she sent out a list of like potential hosts that have already been affiliated with Trent. And then I sent my resume along with the 3 potential hosts I'd be interested in doing a placement with. And then the hosts sort of got back to her saying like, yes, I would like to see Maya for an interview. And then I went with them for an interview, and like that's how I ended up at the Turtle Center.
Yeah, that was very similar to my experience. So after I saw on the academic calendar that I could do community-based research based on my credits and grade point average, I reached out, and then I was given a list of all the potential projects for the year. And then I put in my top 3, and I did a resume and cover letter. And then I would get in touch with the host of the project and do an interview. And then if they were interested, then you're pretty much on board for the project.
Yeah, I'd say that pretty much exactly the same as mine. I was actually able to my placement outside of the list that they provided, but I know who did look at that list and had to choose between, I think there's like 15 or 20 different places that they could have gone. And they interviewed at 3 or 4 of them. And once they got offers back, they got to choose which one they wanted based on which placement they wanted.
So my placement is very different because in social work, you typically don't choose your placement. Travis assigns you to one unless it is a competitive placement. So my placement in third year was a competitive placement, which all that means is essentially you would apply for the position. When I applied, it was all research ones, and I had a resume and cover letter stating like my intent, or some of the professors had questions they wanted you to answer. For my placement specifically, I didn't. I got picked, so I didn't necessarily go through like interview process. I did still have an interview to have that experience and for them to get to know me and me to ask questions. And then this year I was placed, but I also had the option to apply to competitive placements if I had wanted to.
Thanks, folks. It is 2 minutes to 7. And so speaking of Zoom fatigue, I know everybody has lots and lots to always be doing. And it doesn't look like there are any other questions in the chat for our panelists. So with all of that said, I would just like to thank our panelists today for their incredible responses and for everybody who came out and attended our event today. Please feel free to check out our live chat, which is happening until 8 p.m., where you can ask additional questions about housing, scholarship, and more. From 7 to 8 p.m., we will have 2 sessions, a tour of our science facilities and labs, and a session about studying abroad. So following that, from 8 to 9 p.m., there will be a virtual tour of our Peterborough and Durham campuses. So thanks again for spending your evening with us, audience members and panelists alike. It was really lovely to have the opportunity to hear from you folks.